Hello and welcome back to Shelf Center. This is Bryce. Thank you so much for stopping by. Thanks for liking and subscribing. If this is something you end up enjoying, you never know, it could happen. Well, I've got my top 10 of the year, the entire year of 2024. This is one of my favorite videos of the year to make, to kind of you take a look back at what you've read. There have been some really good books this year. This top 10 was like almost impossible. So I do have a number of honorable mentions, just for the fact that it's like I should just do a top 20 probably at this point, maybe top 15, but I'm sticking with 10, and those honorable mentions honestly belong in there. The problem is there's a bunch of these books where I'm like, that's definitely in the top 10, and then all of a sudden it's booted out, and I'm like, how did that happen? I have no idea, other than this was a great year for reading for me. So I will continue, hopefully, this trend for next year. That'll be great. So anyway, first things first, let's jump into it. So we got to talk about those honorable mentions. The first thing is Age of Myth. This is Legends of the First Empire by Michael J. Sullivan. I finally got back to Michael J. Sullivan, and again, this was like, well, that's clearly and easily a top 10, and then it got booted somehow. So anyway, honorable mention for sure. Absolutely enjoying his just fast-paced, just like fun fantasy worlds. Although this one just felt is a little more serious, definitely, than the Hadrian and Royce stuff, the Rhaenyra Revelations. But it was super good, excellently done, well crafted, and I'm excited to read more. And that's all a good sign. Then this one actually got booted. I did a mid-year list of my top 10, and this is getting booted. But a lot of them are staying the same at the very top here. I'm cheating a little by adding some more books to it, though, is all. But anyway, Season of Storms by Andrzej Sapkowski. It's a Witcher book, short stories, and they're excellent. My favorite Witcher books are the ones that are just collections of short stories. I just think that's where Sapkowski really shines and just creates just a really good short story. I feel like the longer novels are pretty much just like padded short stories, frankly. That's kind of how they feel a lot of times. All of a sudden it's like, all right, I'm focusing on these other people. But when he gets just to a nice short story, he does great, and it's just really fun stuff. Then also got booted, Saint Elspeth by Wick Welker. Definitely check that out if you haven't already. It is one of my favorites. Again, was like easy top 10. How did it get booted? You're gonna see, I guess. Then More Than a Vampire by J.R. Carroll. Again, another one that was in my previous top 10 and probably still belongs there. It's so good. And then Gateway, I read on this half of the year, and again thought, that'll probably make it. It didn't. It's a great book. There's some issues I had with it, which I explained. I need to actually do a full review, but had some issues, but it was still very good. But somehow, again, didn't make this top 10. It by Stephen King did have this one actually much higher in my list, but the longer I've kind of stuck with it, it's dropped a little bit, and other books have kind of taken its place. But it's still very good. There's some scenes though that have just kind of like, did I really read that? It's still so good. I think there's some recency bias maybe when I made that list, but it's still an excellent book, and still one of my favorite by Stephen King. It's a rough one in a lot of ways too. All right, so those are my honorable mentions. I wanted to get through. I know I'd like to, again, focus when I get into these videos, and make my list, make my case for the books, and then I'll let you move on with your life. But anyway, number 10, let's do it. Number 10 is going to be Guns of the Dawn by Adrian Tchaikovsky. This is one where I did a read-along with one of my usual groups. This is the Grace Dion, Murphy Napier, and Overly Average Ben group. And then we kind of, I think, have lately decided just to scrap the actual discussion and move on, because nobody could make it happen in the time period. And now we're all kind of a little hazy on it. But it was so good. Like TikTok details. I can definitely tell you I loved the book. It was definitely something I was not ready for. I wasn't prepared for, I don't think at all. It's flintlock fantasy. It is standalone, so there's good things going for it. It also was something I just wasn't ready for, I don't think. And it's kind of this land that in this unending war. Have you heard of that before? And so, but they've gotten to a point where, they're not even just bringing in, every single man, but now they've gotten to drafting the woman. into the war. And so it's an interesting take. It says a lot of interesting things, and that's maybe what gets me thinking. But also, Tchaikovsky's character work is excellent. So definitely first Tchaikovsky, but not my last. I will be reading a lot more. Number 9, I'm going to go with The Book of Lost Things by John Connolly. This is one I keep recommending to people lately. I've kind of realized, and I absolutely just loved it. It was so much fun. It's this magical kind of portal fantasy where you get into kind of a lot of typical fairy tales that we know and love. A lot of Disney ones, Cinderella and the Snow White and the Seven Dwarves. You've got a lot of these just classics. And then you got a twist to them, and so that's what's fun about it. I mean, for instance, I don't think this spoils too much, but the dwarves of the Seven Dwarfs fame are all communists in this, and that's one of my favorite parts. Is just their banter and everything. It's just so good. So it's a twist on some fun fairy tales, and also just a very poignant and kind of beautiful story, and reminiscent of some Neil Gaiman even. Who else? What's the one? The Monster Calls is what I'm thinking of. Kind of that kind of level of I want to say almost sadness, but of like, real pathos going on here. So anyway, good stuff. Number 8, this is one that I've been recommended many times, especially by commenters on the channel, and I finally read it this year, and I'm so glad I did, because I will definitely be reading more. And this is just book 1, Malice by John Gwynne, and it will be, and I say just because I'll be reading much more in this series. I finally understand what the hype is about, and I feel like I only just barely understand what the hype is about. I absolutely loved Malice. It had a slow start for me. Maybe about halfway through was when I suddenly was like, oh, this is crazy. I love it. And it just, everything kind of hit together in just such a perfect way. And I loved it from there till the rest of the book. So I'm so excited to read more in that series, get more John Gwynne in my life. All right, this has been a new, absolutely fun series for me. And actually, so I'm going to include all 3 of the books that I've read so far. And technically, all of these did come out this year, unlike the rest of my list, which did not come out this year. But Dungeon Crawler Carl, Matt Dinneman, absolutely a blast. Just so much fun to read. It's progression fantasy, lit RPG, whatever you want to call it. I know there's probably some like sticklers to, well, there's a difference and you're totally wrong, I'm sure. But essentially it's a video game in literary form, and it's so much fun. There's so much stuff going on. I mean, just the premise alone, where aliens essentially take over and the surviving humans have to compete in this essentially dungeon crawler world now, where by level they have to survive against monsters, and they get a level up and they get all these things, and the world is actually watching them. Well, sorry, the universe is actually watching them. The world is now in this this game, and so the books 1 through 3, really they're all on the same level. I've stated that I liked maybe book 1 the most so far, just because it was introducing such fun concepts, and the rest literally just from page 1 jump right back into, okay, there's the next thing, we're going. I don't know, there's not a lot of just fluff. I feel like it really gets down to business, and I like that. I really appreciate it. So definitely, if you haven't checked this out, such a fun series. Number 6, I'm going to go with Blind Sight by Peter Watts. This one, I actually just entered my top 100 science fiction books of all time list. Pretty high up on the list. It was a good one. This was a great take on just essentially humanity and first contact, and what would you do in this situation. And essentially the whole theme of the book is like, what does it actually mean to be human? Which I know a lot to explore, but like, or even what is it to be sentient? I guess that's a much better one than what is to be human. What is to be sentient, right? Are plants sentient, right? Are even animals that, I mean, they just kind of go with their programming, even just, amoeba or whatever, just things that are they reacting, or are they actually thinking beings? And I like, it really explores it in depth and in a great way, in a really entertaining way, and in a little bit of horror way. So I'm a big fan of. All right, number 5, I did finish a series, which I'm glad I did, especially because the Cosmere is a real thing. It's a big thing, and it's so interconnected. I'm trying not to miss threads in other Cosmere books, so I got to read and catch up. I finally finished this year, Hero of Ages. It was excellent. So I finished the Mistborn trilogy. Arrow 1, I still like overall. The best is going to be the book 1, The Final Empire. The Hero of Ages, I think, is my second favorite. And then Well of Ascension, it got us there. It wasn't my favorite of all time, that's for sure. But it was good. It was fine. It's fun even just exploring the magic system and what's going on here. And I really like the ending. I thought the ending was it was not what I was expecting, but in all the good ways instead of, so it was satisfying and a great ending to a trilogy. And I'm excited because we've got, he's working now on more Mistborn, and so that'll be cool. All right, number 4, we're getting down to the list here, down to the top ones of the list. This is where I said things aren't probably changing from my middle of the year list. The Trouble with Peace by Joe Abercrombie. That was my favorite. I read the whole trilogy is there. It's so good. The Age of Madness by Joe Abercrombie. Just a great series, an insane series. Abercrombie really knows how to put the grim and grimdark sometimes, but also like the grim humor in grimdark as well. And so like the gallows humor, it's so good. There were so many things and again, a middle book to be my favorite. That's what Trouble with Peace was my favorite of the trilogy, but they're all good. I think I'm just too shocked maybe still on book 3. I maybe need a reread. The Wisdom of Crowds is just, there's stuff that happens in there is just insane, as only Joe Abercrombie can do. And but really just, I think, tells you about the dangers of the wisdom of crowds and just how a mob mentality can be, and the fear that's involved in that. And really just, I don't know, it's just a really interesting take on what humans would absolutely do when faced with a ruler that is now unstoppable and you don't want to be the next on the chopping block. Number 3, this is one of my all-time favorite authors. Finally read this. It's going to be Susanna Clarke's Piranesi. It's a short one, it's a quick one, and it's excellent. As opposed to one of my favorite books of all time, Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, which is hugely long and all kinds of footnotes. This lacks footnotes, which is probably good for the story, but I love them when Susanna Clarke does them. But what an interesting story. You can't really say much without spoiling too much, but essentially it's this whole crazy world of hallways and statues. We'll stop there. And just really well told. It's kind of a mystery of like kind of finding out, almost like you're learning alongside your main character who's very naive to this world, but who has been surviving somehow in the strange place. And then you're so suddenly like, wait a second, I think I know what's going on here. And you're slowly fed this information to where you finally, like, it dawns on you as to what's going on. And it's great. I remember just being up late into the night reading, and that's just a fun feeling. All right, number 2, we're going to go with The Republic of Thieves by Scott Lynch. What an excellent ending to to what's out so far, I guess I should say. There's 3 books out. We're hoping for book 4, maybe next year. I'm still holding out hope. There's some novellas. There's a short story. So Lynch has gotten active of late. So I'm excited for that. The novellas apparently will be coming out from Subterranean Press. So that's cool. That's good news. But first of all, love the cover. But this is such a good series. The Gentlemen Bastards are just hilarious, while at the same time there's always just clever like plot going on that involves trying to scam people. So it's like Ocean's 11 in fantasy world, with maybe a little more grim to the grim dark than like Ocean's 11. This definitely, it was my least favorite of the 3 that are out, but really they're all S tier. They're top tier books, and it's only if you had to rank them, I would put this at the bottom technically, but it's like when I try to rank the 3 Lord of the Rings books. They're all just super good, and they are hard to rank anyway. But one of the things, though, I did actually like, usually I enjoy the flashbacks, but I'm really trying to get Back to the Future as to what's happening in like the present time period. This was one I actually liked the flashbacks better than the present time. I just thought it was more interesting and more of a fun plot to go into. So it was funny to have that switch where I was actually looking forward to the flashbacks more. But overall, again, excellent, very clever. Scott Lynch is a very smart man, and I am excited for more in the series. Hopefully, one can hope, right? All right, my number one of the year, and you may already know this because it hasn't been mentioned yet, but I've already mentioned the author. It's going to be Brandon Sanderson, Stormlight Archive. I did read Oathbringer this year in prep for Wind and Truth, and I did read Rhythm of War. I've actually not read Wind and Truth yet, so I can't add that to the list either, but I'm putting them both on here because I can. Because I didn't want to screw up, because like I said, it was hard enough putting 10 of these together, so I figured in a series I can at least do that. But absolutely love these. I liked Oathbringer probably better. Rhythm of War, I struggled with a couple parts just because I feel like it's getting to be maybe that they don't all need to be 1,300 pages. We could shave off a couple pages here and there. That's all I'm saying. Maybe it just doesn't need to be this long for each one of these, but obviously they're going to be. There's the precedent's been set. There's cool stuff going on. There's tons of reveals and everything, so it's absolutely exciting and crazy and nuts. And the magic system is one of just the most fun magic systems of all time. Just it gets to the point where I don't know. I'm like complaining a lot for my number one book. When it says Spren this many times, it was just like, okay, I can't, like I need a little break. That's why I've taken a little break to read Wind and Truth, because I just can't hear the word Spren for just like a little bit here. I need a break from that. But it really, I'm saying that, but a little bit of spoilers here, so definitely I'll put in the description where to jump ahead to. Shadesmar is exploring that is really interesting, getting to the details on that. Just the craziness of the Voidbringers taking over Urithiru. Man, I cannot say that. It's very hard to say that. I don't know how Kate Redding and Michael Kramer do it. One of my struggles, because I'm on it, with Rhythm of War was Taravangian's plan, where it's this crazy, crazy plan, and then suddenly it's just like, yeah, now it's done. It just felt like, really, this genius plan was just like essentially like betray everyone. I know, like what? Anyway, that's part of why this is a little lower, but it's still great. Oathbringer, just the it's so many crazy things happening, but really exploring Dalinar and getting to like his history is some of my favorite parts. Then, great ending, crazy ending. As usual, it's the Sanderlanche. This series is just, it's so epic, it's so huge, it's so vast, and you're kind of almost stressed, just like how are we gonna do this? How do we keep everything together? Still, there's so much information that you're packed into that you love to get, and that you're like, how did Sanderson plan this whole thing? He clearly has been working on this for many years, because just the intricacy of this world that he knows so well. And I went to FanX and went to his specific panel where he literally answers these fans that just know so much more than I do. And he answers them so well that I'm like, holy cow, he knows this inside and out. He's not just going, all right, I'm gonna throw that together. It's incredible. So anyway, what a cool series. It's sad that we don't get another one till 2031, but maybe that's okay. Maybe it's okay. We all needed maybe a little break. But that has been my top 10 for the year. Let me know what's in your top reads for the year 2024. Let me know in the comments below. And what am I missing out on? What should I be reading next year? So thank you, and we'll catch you next time. Maybe next year. We'll see you. Happy New Year. Bye.